Okay, so we saw in the prior lecture that we had our, let's see, I'm going to back up right here. So we had our blastocysts, our trophoblast cells, and our inner cell mass. Here's our endometrial lining. Again, those cells will digest part of the endometrial lining, eventually burrowing that entire cell mass into the endometrial lining. That's what you're seeing here. Those inner cell mass will form something called the embryonic disc. And again, eventually this will become the developing fetus. This cavity will form into something called a yolk sac. And these trophoblast cells will break down and become more specialized cells that we're not necessarily going to worry about. But these trophoblast cells will then form, this region here will become the placenta. Okay, and that's what you're seeing here is this development of the placenta, and now we're seeing that the endometrium is completely covering this developing embryo, and we're seeing that this inner cell mass, again, this bilaminar disc is forming the cells that are going to form all the layers and all the organs and all the parts of an individual. So there are three main germ layers in the developing embryo. These are going to be really important. Please make sure you know these germ layers and what they will become. So the endoderm will end up forming the digestive system, liver, pancreas, and lungs. The mesoderm will form the circulatory system, lungs, and skeletal system and muscular system. And then the ectoderm becomes the hair, nails, skin, and nervous system. Okay. Again, those trophoblast cells will specialize and will start forming the fetal part of placenta. There's a fetal portion and then a maternal portion of it. Remember, the developing embryo and fetus is not breathing air. It is getting all of its oxygen and nutrient exchange from mom through the placenta and through the umbilical cord. So that's what you're seeing here. This part of the umbilical cord, this is all belonging to the fetus. And what you're noticing is that these blood vessels are ending in loops. Maternal blood and fetal blood do not mix. They do not mix. Okay? They can't, because again, each would see the other as a foreign body because they don't have the exact same DNA. So they wouldn't have the same MHC markers. Remember, back to our immune system. So again, you have to keep them separate. Okay. So the maternal portion of the placenta forms from decidua basalis. I mentioned this to you guys already. The trophoblast cells are going to form these chorionic villi, these finger-like structures that have the blood vessels in them. Large surface area for lots of nutrient and gas exchange. So some of the functions of the placenta, I really like, this is a very nice summary slide of the basic functions. So nutrition and digestion, it's going to help mediate the movement of glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, vitamins, minerals from maternal side to the fetal side. It helps store nutrients early in pregnancy to accommodate increased demands later in pregnancy. And it will also act as a filter for the developing fetus, right? So it helps filter and excrete fetal waste into the maternal bloodstream, right? So that means mom's kidneys got to work a little bit harder. Respiration, again, it's going to pass oxygen over to the fetus and absorb and take carbon dioxide to the maternal side, right? Let mom worry about the breathing for both of them. And then there's also an endocrine function. There's human chorionic gonadotropin. So again, the placenta has these functions to help maintain the pregnancy. It's going to take over for the corpus luteum once it is formed. And then, again, it's just helping to mediate the growth of both mom and baby fetal side, right? So as far as organogenesis goes, this is simply, as far as definitions go, the process of forming organs and tissues. I already mentioned these different groups to you. So again, ectoderm is going to form these, mesoderm these, endoderm those. We saw that in an earlier slide. As far as the circulatory system goes, so again, I mentioned this, fetus is receiving both oxygen and nutrients from the placenta. Once the umbilical cord is severed after childbirth, after birth, the circulatory system ends up being reconfigured. There are various shortcuts. I think I mentioned these to you earlier, but maybe if I didn't, let me mention them to you now. So we have a few shortcuts here in the fetal heart. So let's see if this goes in a great order. We'll do it this way. The umbilical vein is going to carry oxygenated blood from the placenta. It goes through the liver and into the inferior vena cava. This shunt right here in the liver is called the ductus venosus. That will allow it to return to the heart. There is a ductus arteriosus that's going to connect the pulmonary trunk to the aorta. Basically, this is bypassing the need for blood to go to the lungs, because again, in the fetus, they are not breathing. There is a foramen ovale that allows the blood to go from the right atrium to the left atrium, because again, there is no point in the blood going to the lungs. Those are going to be our major shunts. So we have this foramen ovale, this ductus arteriosus, and then this ductus venosus. All of these are the main fetal shunts. Now, as far as this foramen ovale, shortly after birth, that is going to close and become the fossa ovalis, right? You saw that already in the heart. This ductus arteriosus is also going to collapse shortly after birth. It becomes the ligamentum arteriosum. Hopefully you remember that. And then this ductus venosus is basically going to collapse and form, it turns into like a ligamentous tissue. It basically forms the round ligament in the liver. Okay, so as we continue in weeks 9 through 12, organ systems are going to continue to develop, including the brain. Bone formation is going to continue. Fetal movements are somewhat weak. Usually they're not quite felt just yet. Bone marrow starts taking over the process of red blood cell production. Liver starts to produce bile. Fetal circulation. The fetus is going to circulate amniotic fluid by producing a urine. The eyes are developed, but there's no way for them to open their eyes. The eyelids are fused shut. Fingers and toes are beginning to form nails. As we get into weeks 13 through 16, the main thing that's occurring here is that the sensory organs are going to continue to develop. So again, eyes are going to continue to develop, the mouth, ears, the skin is going to start growing hair. The excretory system is also developing, so you can see this. Kidneys are well formed. Fetal feces begins to accumulate in the intestines, and you'll see it consists of ingested amniotic fluid, cellular debris, mucus, bile. There should not be any meconium in the amniotic fluid. If that happens and the baby ingests that, they can die. So that can be a sign of fetal distress. In weeks 16 to 20, the fetus continues to grow, limb movements becomes more powerful. Again, the pregnant woman will feel the movements very clearly now. Sebaceous glands will coat the skin in a waxy protective substance called the vernix caseosa. You can see it protects and moisturizes the infant's skin and it provides lubrication during childbirth. There is a special type of hair called lanugo hair, but it's shed as it continues to grow. Ever so often, some babies, especially preemies, are born with some of that lanugo hair still on them. Weeks 21 to 30, these are mostly characterized by rapid weight gain. Our bone marrow is now taken over completely for red blood cell production. The myelin sheath in the nervous system is being produced. It's interestingly enough, it continues during our growth until adolescence. The eyelids are no longer fused. You can actually start seeing eyelashes. Lungs are finally producing a surfactant that will help them open and close upon birth. The testes will descend into scrotum if it is male. And then, it's basically at the size it's going to be. You don't have to memorize any of these numbers. But basically it's just a little bit skinnier, but usually at the length that it's going to be at birth. And then at week 31, anytime to birth, basically the fetus is laying down more and more subcutaneous fat. The skin is going to transition from sort of a red appearance to soft and wrinkly and pink. Again, that lanugo hair is going to be shed, and then the nails kind of grow to the tips of the fingers and the toes. So that's basically the development in a very large kind of overview of fetal development and what is going on when in the organs. Again, any of this is going to be a lot more complicated than just this, and there's a lot more that's involved. But I think this gives you a good basis for any program that you're going into. So if you have any questions about any of this, please let me know.